cannot afford to be so politically correct anymore. Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
Please continue to hold for the next available representative.
Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
We appreciate you waiting. What is it you're waiting for? Do you even know anymore?
These are people who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Disconnected.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a rare midweek stream, although some of that will be more frequent in the near future, as we do have the primaries coming up, so we're going to be covering those starting later on this spring. But make sure that you guys like the stream down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new. You guys know the drill. The face cam goes on at 100 likes. We are at 50, but we have more than 50 people in here who have not yet liked the stream, so I anticipate we'll get there in a very short period of time. So we have to talk today about the ICE incident, the shooting that took place in the state of Minnesota, where the left is claiming that this is evil murder, when in reality it seems more like a self-defense situation. People want to say it's a tragedy, sure, but the notion that this is murder in cold blood, ICE is just out there indiscriminately taking people's heads off. That's not what's happening. We're going to be explaining why, and we'll also be critiquing the right on this as well, because the right doesn't know how to set the narrative. Not everybody on the right, but there are a lot of people on the right who don't really know how to get out in front of this stuff and set the narrative properly when it's an 80-20 issue in reality. I mean, even people like John Fetterman, not about this, but about things like Greenland, where it should be 80-20, but so many people on the right are just too busy bickering to actually just set the narrative properly that this is something that would benefit the United States, no matter if we paid every person on the island like $1 million to support. It still would be a big net positive in the long run, for sure. So there's that. But we'll also be talking about the other victories of 2026 that have taken place as well. And if we hit our goal, which is 15 super chats of $5 and above, which we have 90 minutes to hit that goal, I anticipate we will hit that goal. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, You guys can send those in via Super Chat, the $ function, become a member, do all that good stuff. But most importantly, like the stream so we can get to 100 likes. We're 73 out of 100 there. I know I don't usually stream on Thursdays or really any weekday to begin with unless an election's going on, which, like I said, we're going to be covering all the primaries this year and more. Those are going to be a lot of fun to cover. We got Texas coming up, and I'm sure we can get into some of the electoral politics aspects of this calendar year because we're 8 days in, and already it seems like the tides have turned a bit. 2025, a little tumultuous of a year. A lot of groundwork being laid, but not enough returns to the point where complainers were able to occupy the discourse. And you also had people that actually could do a very good job of setting the narrative that were just killed in cold blood. Rest in peace to Charlie Kirk. That is true. And the same people that were actively celebrating that are now mourning the death of one of their foot soldiers, mentally ill foot soldiers, who decided it was a good idea to ram their vehicle into an ICE officer, which eventually led the ICE officer to fire in virtually self-defense of a 4,000-pound murder weapon, because that is what a vehicle is at that stage in the game. You know, you have this person accelerating. We'll get into all of this and more, but hit the like button. 15 likes away, guys. We will get there. But I saw somebody in chat say something, why do we need Venezuela? I don't think we need Venezuela, but I do think that we should take the oil, because you have all these people that are like, oh, this is actually about the oil. This is another war for oil, even though it's like a 3-hour war. So they try to make it like Iraq, where we didn't actually keep the oil. In fact, that was one of Donald Trump's biggest critiques of the Iraq war, is if you shouldn't go in, but if you're going in, keep the oil. That would benefit the United States. We did not keep the oil. So you have to keep the oil. We need the oil because gas prices, I know they're going down. They should go down further. And I know we should drill here and all that stuff is true. So once again, guys, like the stream, super chat. We're already 1 out of 15 to our goal. And we will be ready to begin when that like clock strikes 100. Even if we go below 100, because some people like to be contrarian, we still keep going. So that's how the show works. That's how we operate. We're going to be getting to the ICE agent incident, where the left is just completely losing their mind because they're trying to virtually justify a hostile takeover of the United States. These NGOs have just pumped this narrative, all these narratives, I should say, down these people's throats, and they act insane. They act unhinged, and in many cases, it's fatal. And obviously, we don't like it when people die. That's not what this is about. This is not a celebration stream for something that's a tragedy that will probably, the left is going to try to use it to bolster their narrative. But regardless, we hit 100 likes, and the face cam is on. And I know we shaved once a year. We do a full shave at least once a year. And it was the start of the year, so I decided, why not? We'll get it done. So I apologize for the facial hair enjoyers out there. It will be back momentarily. In fact, by the next stream, you'll probably notice it growing in a little bit. But you have this incident that takes place where you have, and I kind of wanted to showcase the video. And this is what one influencer online decided to point out. And you have the incident, and I don't want to play it in full because monetization purposes, things like that. But you have a vehicle, and this woman is out there. She's antagonizing these agents. Why is she there? She probably shouldn't be there. And you can tell because even her own family members, her brother-in-law, who has manages some of the custodies with the children's or whatever, he went out there and said that she should have minded her own business, should not have been there in the first place, which is pretty much accurate. Why are you there? The left says it was they say legal observer, civil observer. That's like their new tagline. Why do you need that anyways? Some people are trying to do their jobs. You are a random person. You are not some performance evaluator. You are not some person that comes in that's hired by the department to see if these people are doing their jobs. You're an agitator. You're an activist. And like a lot of these other activists that happen to not be all that mentally stable, you decide to antagonize them. You have your car there. You put your car in drive. You point it towards these people. You do hit the guy. Now, keep in mind, the tires have no traction and spin in place, so they can hear the acceleration. If there was not any ice, the different kind of ice, but if it was like, I guess you would say Arizona, it'd be over for the officer. So thankfully, the ice was the buffer that spared the officer's life, although it did give him time to react, time to shoot through the windshield. In self-defense, you could say, well, why didn't he shoot the tires? You don't know what could happen to the car. It could spin out. It could catch on fire. It could catch on fire in front of an elementary school and kill 50 children. You don't want that. It's the same argument. Why don't you shoot the person in the leg? Person that gets shot in the leg still has access to a weapon. There's plenty of things that could happen or go wrong in that particular situation that you would still want to avoid. Just like a lot of these police officer shootings, these are very, very intense life or death situations. They train people for this. And being an individual who's apparently a civil observer, you should know better. You should know that. You're signing your own death warrant when you go out there and do stuff like this. And then, of course, you have all these people that say this is like a murder, like ICE is just going down, because they always say this nonsense. ICE is kidnapping citizens. And it's they're not doing that. Maybe they'll inquire about somebody's paperwork and then they'll release them. And then it turns out that the guy actually voted for Trump and thanked ICE for doing their job. Once it's done, they call that profiling or something, when in reality, are you really looking for, in most cases, when you're trying to round up illegal aliens? Are you looking for somebody that looks like they're from Sweden? Probably in most cases you're not. It's just the way it is. I'm Middle Eastern. If somebody wants to at the airport, if they think I'm a part of some group because I look like some of the suspects or whatever that they'd be looking for, and they pull me aside for extra screening, I wouldn't care. It doesn't affect me. I want to make sure my community's safe. I don't want to necessarily hold up people from doing the job that they're supposed to be doing, regardless. So they always make that the narrative. In this case, this is just some random white woman who's a leftist, who's a lesbian, who was there with their lesbian partner for some reason, who was outside the car for some odd reason and filming this. This was a very strange situation, almost like it was coordinated or something. And they go out there, and this vehicle, from every angle you can see, when you look at the slowed down video, the wheels were pointed directly at the officer. It shot directly through the front windshield, like you would see in any instance that would be classified as self-defense. But that didn't stop the left from losing their minds about this incident, which, again, I understand that this isn't a good thing. If you could push a button and have this not happen, yeah, we don't want this stuff to happen. But this individual decided to mess around, will be nice, unlike the mayor of Minneapolis who decided to swear at ICE, and we'll get to that in a minute. But then she FO'd. She found out. So regardless, this is not something, and I'm sure the body cam footage is going to vindicate this person, because you have this disconnect, the local PD, the people under Jacob Fry, who's dollar store Justin Trudeau over there in Minneapolis. He is definitely trying to push this narrative for one reason or another. Maybe he wants to pull a Mayor Pete and run for president, knowing his city has less people. The problem is nothing good seemingly comes out of Minnesota. Nothing good comes out of Minneapolis. Everyone's tired of hearing about Minneapolis. You had the whole incident with the whole Floyd thing, and they sat on that body cam footage for multiple months because they knew that it would probably, I wouldn't say fully exonerate the officer, given the pressure, but it would probably lower a lot of the narrative because you could see, okay, this guy calls an ambulance for this guy. He's not trying to kill him. This is not like I'm going to hunt this guy down because of his ethnicity or race or whatever and put my knee on his neck for like 20 minutes the way that they claimed. Like there's a process for this stuff, but because it gets lost in the media narrative, which is why I say that the right needs to do a better job at setting the narrative. ICE, before the election, it was polling high. Now it's not polling so high. Yes, they use leading questions for sure, but still they're trying to drum up a lot of this, like they're trying to drum up this smoke screen where these people are now viewed as like these villains, when in reality they're just doing what people wanted them to do. They wanted people who came into the country illegally, not just for the past 5 years, but for whatever amount of years before that, to be removed from the United States. And now it seems like the narrative is somewhat shifting. Now, Donald Trump does a good job at setting the narrative. Come election time, the narrative setting is much easier for the right wing because it pits something against something else. For sure, it's harder for an incumbent party in general to get out in front of things and set the narrative, just as it was for the Democrats under Biden. But this is like an 80-20 issue. You're talking about people who are illegally in the country, these Somali fraudsters in particular. ICE is in Minneapolis. They're trying to, investigate, trying to deport and remove as many illegal aliens, people who should not be in the country, from the United States as possible. But they can't do their job because you have some leftist agitator who's probably involved with some left-wing NGO who's trying to go out there and stifle them from doing their job and tries to kill them with her vehicle, a 4,000-pound murder weapon, a 2-ton murder weapon, directly at him. Thankfully, the ICE, no pun intended, on the ground was there to serve as a buffer. This was not a murder in any stretch of the term. This was self-defense by every stretch of the term. And you could say it's an unfortunate situation. You could say maybe she was just trying to pull away. Maybe she wasn't trying to kill him. But here's the problem. You don't know that. You have no way of knowing that whatsoever. The wheels were directly pointed at the guy. Even if that was a mistake or whatever, which I don't really believe in coincidences anymore, but let's even just say for the sake of the argument that was a mistake, how the hell is the guy supposed to know that when she's out there antagonizing him? And this is the same guy who was, I believe, assaulted by an illegal alien. There were reports the officer involved was attacked by an illegal alien before. So this is kind of the main concern that I have here with this argument that, this is some misunderstanding, but the guy should still be charged, or he didn't do anything, he didn't do everything properly, as they say. No, he did do everything in the situation that you would need to do, and he will be exonerated, most likely, just because the facts are so much on his side, you can't even spin it at this stage in the game. But that hasn't stopped the left from reacting the way that they have to this, which has been completely just bonkers, which is to be expected. But this is what they do to set the narrative. They flood the zone with bullshit. Every single event, they flood it with BS. The same thing when they said Charlie Kirk's attacker was a right-winger, and then they pull it, and a good 30% of people still believe this nonsense because they have that strategy. They're shameless. We understand how they operate. They flood the zone with nonsense. Where are our guys flooding the zone with the facts, flooding the zone with the truth? Elon did a lot to help Trump before the election just by highlighting certain things on X that he would reply to, and it would get all these hundreds of millions of impressions. And he has replied to the mayor of Minnesota here, which is true, but it even seems like his own platform, for one reason or another, is throttling him, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. And obviously he has the power to fix it, but there's a lot we just don't know. But you see the way these people have been reacting to this. You had this, as we know, where her brother-in-law was saying, she shouldn't have even been there, should have minded her own business. And then you have these people out there that are protesting on her behalf. So she's the female George Floyd. Some people say George Foyd, Foyd being internet slang shorthand for female. But, these people protesting in favor of George Floyd out there saying, Kristi Noem will redact, we're not even going to repeat these words, save a life, redact ICE, which actually does the opposite, but they don't see these people as people. It's very telling when you look at stuff like this. These are the same people that voted for Jay Jones in Virginia, who actually outperformed Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. He outran her. These are the same people that have just cheered or defended people that were cheering on the death of Charlie Kirk, and they expect me to cry tears for somebody that basically made their own bed and lied in it. Like I said, I'm not celebrating it. You could say on paper any death's a tragedy. However, in this case, there's nothing that I can look at and say, oh, well, this is horrible what the guy did, because that's really what they're trying to do. They're trying to set the narrative that ICE is bad. ICE as a whole is bad because deportations are bad. Enforcing the law is bad. All those 10, 15 million people, even if it's a little bit less than that came in under the Biden administration, they're saying, no, they get to stay. They're going to get amnesty. They tried to basically say during election season, they tried to steer clear of that, walk away from it because they knew it was unpopular. Now that Trump's in power, they're leaning into the woke. And while they'll still have their base no matter what, and it is the high propensity base, when you're actually faced with an electorate that's a real electorate, not one of these cupcake electorates, not one of these Mickey Mouse electorates that they have to face off in it's a special election with, low turnout. That doesn't mean anything to me. It means absolutely nothing, like negative meaning even. Because even the midterm turnout's going to be much higher than it was probably in 2022, if I had to guess, when it came down to something like that one district that we saw in the state of Tennessee, where Matt Van Epps ended up winning by like 9 points when so many Democrats thought he was actually going to go out there and lose. Turns out he won. He won with a sizable margin. So good for him. But that's besides the point. We understand that the left be celebrating if there was no ice on the ground. And I'm talking about weather ice. Without the weather ice, they would have been celebrating. Just as many of them celebrated the incident that took place in Dallas until they found out that the only people that got shot were not the agents that got shot. The only people that ended up getting killed were illegals in custody because the shooter was a moron, all these other mentally ill foot soldiers that the left has. So it's kind of like the John Brown thing, where it turns out that he killed several slaves on his way to do his rebellion that the far left lionizes, and history's kind of whitewashed that, but that's more of a discussion for a different time for sure. But you see what's going on here in the all these, and you have a video. This was a breakdown done by Osmongold, I believe. If we could play this, it's a minute long. Take a listen.
Right there. She's moving forward, and he had to just barely get out of the way. He barely got. If he hadn't moved, she would have run him over. Watch the tire. See, now the tire is moving forward. You see the tire is moving forward with the officer directly in front of the car. You can see the spinning. This would have never happened if she had just gotten out of the car, and it would have never happened if she hadn't just tried to block the police in the first place. I see her spinning her wheels forward right there. You're trying to run over that officer. You are. She doesn't give a fuck. Plus, if you're next to a car like that, you can hear it when it starts accelerating. You know what? You actually bring up a great point. I hadn't even thought about this. But the police officer who was in front of the car heard the wheels accelerating. And yeah, absolutely, he's going to pull out his fucking gun. That's a great point. New pictures show the bullet hole in the windshield, so clearly shot from in front of the car. Here we go. And you can see right here, if the cop wasn't in front of the vehicle, then he wouldn't have been able to make this shot. I've seen the video.
Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it, and it's true, because what do you do in that situation? So first of all, she's not obeying the orders, trying to get away. Some people will say that's justification for, shooting in the first place, although let's just concede that it's not. But then she positions her car right in front, tries to run him over, and it's evident that it's self-defense. There's no other argument to be even had here. That is a self-defense situation, but you understand what the left is trying to do. You understand that they're trying to drum up this nonsensical narrative that just is the biggest gaslighting campaign in the world, so they could exonerate, not only just exonerate themselves like they tried to do in the case of Charlie Kirk or any of these other things, but they're trying to blame ICE. They're trying to drum up support against ICE. ICE has been winning because even if you want to say the deportation numbers haven't gone up as much as we would have liked, that's the process removals. The self-deportations are up by millions, and that's confirmable. You could look at rent prices in certain places, traffic, just like the ethnicities of certain births, the white birth rates going up and these other birth rates are going down, which was kind of unheard of or unprecedented in modern time. But you're seeing this. You're seeing negative net migration, which means that you are seeing deportations. They're being effective, and now they're trying to bully these people out of being effective. In turn, I think it's going to make more people leave the country if they know that these things are coming or they're being ramped up, they're being accelerated. You could imagine that more illegal aliens would just depart the country, not try to stay in the country. So, regardless of whichever way these people want to chalk it up, they're going to say that it was some evil murder, even though we have enough tape that would disprove that. Donald Trump here saying, I have just viewed the clip of this event, which took place in Minneapolis. It was a horrible thing to watch. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator. And the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer who seems to have shot her in self-defense. Based on the attached clip, it is hard to believe he is alive, but is now recovered, because he was hit by the car too. They forget about that. The situation is being studied in its entirety, but the reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis. They're trying to do the job of making America safe. We need to stand by and protect our law enforcement from this radical left movement of violence and hate. President Donald J. Trump. So when you talk about the right not knowing how to set the narrative, Trump is exempt from that because he actually knows how. And J.D. Vance also put out a good statement where he said that we are standing with these officers as well, because that's the thing. They want these people to be thrown under the bus. But if Donald Trump is going to be out there and defending the truth, defending reality, then guess what? It's going to be a lot harder for the left to get away with it. This isn't like, Floyd when, Trump goes out there and says this is like murder or whatever because they only see the 5-second clip. This is like, stuff just got real, and these people should not be allowed to act like this. There's no reason for it. ICE is doing a good job. They're trying to remove people from the country who shouldn't be there. Just like if you come home and it turns out you have a burglar, you're going to want to call the police and have them removed. ICE in the cities is making sure mass deportations are viable, that they can happen, that it's not some pipe dream, and that's why their workforce is being expanded. We get rid of these government jobs, then you replace them with ICE. If we're going to have a bureaucracy, you might as well actually make it work for the American people. You might as well at least ensure that we have a border, ensure that we have communities that are not going to be overrun by illegal aliens, and you're going to kind of set the tone for the level of order you want in the United States. They always try to make these outlandish comparisons. It's just having people that can enforce the law, cleaning up the mess that you people have made, by the way, not just over the past 5 years, but over the past 30 years with illegal immigration, which is way too out of control. So it's a good thing ICE's funding is going up. Jacob Fry not happy about that, saying, get the F out of Minneapolis. This dope over here thinks that he's running the show. You're a mayor. You're not the governor, who's also a dope, but you're definitely not the president. You don't have authority over ICE. ICE is a federal organization within the United States. They don't answer to you. They answer to Donald Trump. And any attempts to remove ICE is technically just unconstitutional on a surface level. I mean, it's basic, 9th grade civics type of stuff, but it's true. there's that. But I did want to pivot a little bit to what has taken place this year alone. And we talked about this a little bit in yesterday's video, because Tim Walz's career is gone because of a 23-year-old YouTuber that just showed up with a camera to Minneapolis. Another incident involving Minnesota. We forgot about that. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's turned into a loudmouth, who goes on The View. She's going on The View again. She's gone. She's out of Congress. What's she going to do? Start a fringe podcast on Rumble? Or is she going to go work at CNN? We'll see what happens. One of the two. There's no in between, which is kind of surprising. Weird, like, gymnastics thing she's doing out there. But also Trump getting rid of Maduro. We're taking the oil. ICE heroes stopping a terrorist attack via self-defense. The left took the bait, but we need to get the right to find a way to set the narrative a little bit better. Trump to ban BlackRock. Some people say it's technically Blackstone. I don't really know the difference. But from buying up these homes, he's put an executive order in place to stop it. Still, you have people whining about it, saying he should have done that before. It's because we whined about it. It's like Trump is just brainstorming solutions. All these people want to find a way to whine. There's two types of people in the world, whiners and winners. That doesn't mean that you can't critique, but there's a difference between critiquing in good faith, where people will listen to you, or critiquing in bad faith, where people will rightfully just laugh at you, as they currently do. And it's been a great start to 2026. We've only had a week, and I'd like to continue that momentum for sure. But regardless, it's just been a very good start to the year. 2025, for those who don't remember, you had like helicopter crashes, firebombing of Teslas. It was just a rough start to the year, and you kind of had some good moments and you kind of had some iffy moments, but there was a lot of work that was being done, a lot of groundwork that was laid down that was very useful. And as we move forward into 2026, as we are in 2026 now, we kind of get to see a lot of those returns. You know, you got the stock market approaching 50K. That was one of my 6 outlandishly bold predictions. We're about to hit 2 out of 6. So we'll see what happens. But if we hit 6 out of 6, it's going to be a good year for sure. Even if we hit 4 out of the 6, depending on which 4, I would say it would be a great year. So we're already 8 out of 15 super chats towards our goal. And we have to read these super chats. American Nerd 76 is starting us off with a $2 super chat saying, "Never give the left an inch on anything." That's where people always like, "Oh, this actually looks bad." Even if you think that at first, do your own research. Don't try to just throw out these. I actually think that these things in the past were good, but this is actually really bad. It's like, I don't know why these people do this to themselves, but they're not helping it. They're not helping themselves. They're not helping the right. Maybe just lay low and wait for it to pan out, because it only took about 30 seconds before you could actually see the full video. There's no justification for calling this murder. I don't even understand what else a reasonable person would do in a situation like that, and that's the legal bar that you would need to clear. Good spirits for 5, thank you. Giblet6371 says, "Someone needs to explain to these kids that prices are not going down pre-COVID levels. Wages need to go up, which a lot of employers are not doing." Well, the wage growth overall has gone up a bit, but we would hope to see more. I do think that the additional tax cuts, which help out the middle class more, the working class more, they're going to help. But there does need to be something regarding wages for sure. I mean, we're already seeing it. We'd like to see it more. But it is true that you're not going to see a lot of prices just magically reverse, because you don't get deflation very often. You get inflation. We had a lot of it. You want the rate to slow, and you want wage growth to accelerate. So we'll monitor that for sure. But the data we've seen is positive. We just would like it to get better. And there's many reasons to believe that data will indeed get better as we move forward. So American Nerd 76 says, is it time for Trump to send troops into Minnesota? That would be very funny to put it at a minimum. But then you probably would have some Republicans that would try to like impeach him for that or something. Even though I think what Walz is doing is treasonous and what these other people are doing are treasonous, and I think that you could argue that it would be justifiable based on that fact alone. If you have a treasonous governor, go in and arrest him. Why not? I don't see a problem with that. Hard Gold 556 for 2 says, what's your view on the Second Amendment? I support the Second Amendment. It's not like my number one issue overall. Like, I know there's some people that are like single issue voters on the Second Amendment, but I support the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, own weaponry. We have, like, in terms of like gun control, we've been over this countless times. It's not effective. It's not efficient in many cases. And there's plenty of reasons why things like mass shootings occur in the U.S. that don't occur in other countries, and it doesn't really involve the weaponry, because you could still like adjust for the difference in guns. It's not even gonna explain it. It's a cultural phenomenon first and foremost. But Jaquel 4711 says, we don't need the oil, but China does. Venezuela, okay, well, now it's gonna be ours. That's the thing. Like, that this was not about democracy so much as people want to make it out to be. Like, you have Tucker Carlson saying it was actually about gay marriage in Venezuela. Like, he doesn't, like, what is wrong with him? What has happened to this guy? Like, I'm sorry, but everybody's thinking it. If they're not saying it or just like in alignment with him for one reason or another, they're thinking it. Like, this guy's off. Like, what's up with this guy? Going out there just with these ridiculous takes that don't even make any sense. Like, if gay marriage was the thing, they could easily go in and topple every African dictator in every country over there where it's legal in zero and then install it. It's not about the gay marriage aspect. It's not like Maduro hasn't held up gay flags himself. It's clearly about the fact that this guy is harming Americans with the drug trade, and he has the oil, and it would be easy to take him out. And he's also a puppet and a pawn for China and Russia. So you have the enemy's sphere that is trying to build influence in our hemisphere, where we have the ability under the Monroe Doctrine to just do whatever the hell we want in this side of the world, because it would benefit the United States. Yeah, I mean, taking him out is fairly simple, fairly easy. Now, if this was some long, drawn-out war, then I think people would not have the same view that they had of the just swift competency of Trump and Rubio and all these people in the administration. American Nerd 76 says, suspend habeas corpus for these people. Tucson Paleocon for 5, which counts toward the goal, which we are 4 away from hitting as we speak, saying, looking forward to the gear grinding segment. Well, we have to hit the goal first. Wild and Crazy Bear for 2 says, Minnesota hasn't been the same since Prince died. Well, I think that Minnesota was not really all that different before, to be fair. John Waffle, H2P for 10, says it's time for the Supreme Court to overturn Hodges. The mental illness is, well, that's not, I don't think that's going to change the mental illness. Now, it should be overturned. I think that they might be waiting until after the midterm so they don't give the Democrats another thing to, because I don't think it's going to impact so many votes, but it does impact the fundraising, and fundraising can go a long way in an election like that for sure. Now, like at the state level, it's still going to be legal in many states, but it was a bad, wrongly decided decision that was meant to placate the radicals in the Obama administration, which included Barack Obama himself, who did a complete and total 180 on the topic from the time he first got elected to the time he left office. So American Nerd 76 says she was a left-wing terrorist and was treated as such. Well, exactly. I mean, if you are in a position where you're attacking the law enforcement and you happen to get, if you happen to get hit in the process, then that's not on them, that's on you. These vigils are people wasting their time because they're just too stupid to understand the situation, or because they choose not to out of hatred for the opposition, one reason or another. I think the whole thing is their entire ideology is based on either not knowing things, pretending not to know things, or mental illness. There's no other backing to their ideology as a whole. Giblet6371 says Trump needs to enact martial, he spelled martial wrong, law, or it's going to take long to get anything done. Well, if you have to invoke the Insurrection Act, you have to invoke the Insurrection Act. I mean, is it going to be full-on martial law as you put it? Maybe not in practice, maybe on paper, but whatever it's going to be, it's going to be effective and get things done. American Nerd 76 says Minnesota is a lost cause, let it rot. 20-something Drifter 11 for 5 says Minnesotan here. I am at the point where I'm doing everything to get out of this state. It's a good state, but the MSP rules it, and MSP sucks. MSP being the Twin Cities. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's like you have Chicago and you have the rest of Illinois. It's kind of similar. Of course, it's a more competitive state for sure. But I mean, yeah, even like just moving across the border would make sense to like Iowa or Wisconsin or whatever. I don't know why you would choose to live in Minnesota if you don't have to live in Minnesota, unless your like family lineage is from there. Like I would be trying to get out of Minnesota for sure if I lived there. Thankfully, I don't. So next super chat, XR Pre777 for 10 says there are at least 10 righteous people in Minneapolis, so no fire from heaven, but the blood of innocents cries out to heaven for justice. Let's not forget the 2 children murdered during mass. Yeah, that was the other incident, and it's another thing that happened. Why does all this stuff happen in Minnesota in particular? Feels like the state is cursed. 20-something Drifter 11 says I lived abroad for 3 years in I believe it's South Korea, unless he's referring to Saskatchewan. I had overstayed my visa. My butt would have been in cuffs and headed to the airport the next day. Well, thank you for the member chat. Giblet6371 for 10 says if people, and again, that's true for the visa overstay. They have to crack down on those. I mean, that's a big, important part of it too. But Giblet6371 says if people are going to whine so much, can they at least vote locally? Trump can't do everything. Well, that's another problem, because you have people that whine and then they want to sit out the midterms thinking it's going to be better for them. It's going to get worse for you, first of all. If you claim you're so more base than Trump and that Trump is the real betrayer, you would still want to move the GOP in that direction. In fact, you'd want to move it past him. You don't do that by saying, I'm going to sit it out or vote for the Democrats because I'm going to show Trump something. Trump's going to be out of there in 2 years anyways, you jackass. If anything, it's going to show, based on how politics actually works, like in the real world, by the way, like the real world where people actually vote, the real media, which still does have pull, by the way. If you're over 25, the narrative is still the narrative. These people, they think they're really making a dent or a difference by saying, I'm not voting. It's like, you understand that the Republican Party, the establishment, they will use that as a reason to claim the mantle back. You're doing, it's the beautiful loser stuff that the establishment has done for decades, but it's in reverse. The accelerationism is the dumbest thing you could possibly think of, just given reality, given how politics works. You're not showing the GOP anything by sitting home. The last time people did that, by the way, they blamed Trump, who was actually doing multiple rallies in Georgia during the runoffs. They didn't say, oh, well, it's because we didn't defend Trump enough, which was supposedly the reason for people boycotting the runoffs, which probably cost Republicans at least 1 seat in the runoffs. But it was actually the opposite. Of that effect was reality, because that's not how this stuff works. If you actually vote, if you give Trump a majority, even if there's some rhinos mixed in, even some of the rhinos will fall in line, because these people are just like pawns. Like if Donald Trump tells these people to do something, chances are they're just going to do it. They're going to fall in line. Yeah, you'll have some people that don't, but usually it's like strategic, like Susan Collins, for example, voting to condemn Trump's unauthorized Venezuela thing because she has to run in a D+10 state for re-election. So of course she's going to go out there and kind of differentiate herself from Trump. It makes sense. It doesn't really have any bearing in reality, but it's kind of like a virtue signal that pays off. But like a big majority helps. Like you want to primary out the rhinos, we're going to be doing that here in the state of Texas with John Cornyn. That's fine. But the notion that, and it's funny because none of the people saying this would ever vote in a primary because they're lazy and too busy whining on social media, possibly from a foreign country running some sort of demoralization op, as we know. So, be careful of this stuff. Tucson Paleocon for 5 says, American Greenland imminent. If these talks continue, we'll be probably making a video on that within the next week. But it's possible because you just have to buy the support of the people. And you could say, well, you're spending taxpayer dollars. I'd rather spend it there than spend it in the Congo and all these other places we've been giving foreign aid to the tune of billions of dollars. If you give $1 billion to the people of Greenland so they support your annexation over it, well, guess what that means? It means that you will get control over Greenland in a much more expedited process, if that makes any sort of sense. So John Waffle says Minneapolis mayor needs to be prosecuted federally for terrorism and treason. I agree. American Nerd 76 for 2 says Tucker's in the Candace. Well, we'll get to Tucker. That was the grind my gears segment because his reply to this, and we'll get to this when I'm done reading the super chats that I have, but his response to this was horrific. It was so bad. It was like, it was borderline satire. It's like, how is this guy even a real person? I don't understand how this guy's even real. Wyatt for 5 says, what is it about Minneapolis that causes so many riots, and how can people watch the videos and still blame the officer? Because they choose not to. Or they'll watch videos from the other angle, or they'll try to see it the way that they want to see it. That's why. Doesn't make it right. It actually does the opposite, but we know why this stuff happens. Sean Browning for 2 says the vehicle's a weapon when yeah, exactly. Vehicles kill more people every year than guns. In fact, American Nerd 76 for 6 says, as much as I hate the Patriot Act, Trump consider using it to deal with the insanity, maybe even have the FBI go back to Hoover tactics. Well, the thing about the whole surveillance thing, and you hear all this talk about like Palantir, and that's like the new schizoid theory about J.D. Vance, is that, oh, he worked for Palantir, he can't be on our side, because they think that that's like aligned with the left. The left is clearly the number one enemy in this country today. We understand that. That is really what the deep state is made out of. These old like rhino people are all like retired or whatever. They're not nearly as big of a threat to whatever remains in the left. And Trump has made very impressive, underrated strides to kind of dismantle some of this stuff for sure. But as for like Palantir, the founder or co-founder has literally said that it was founded to stop communism. The other member of it was speaking at Trump's 2016 RNC convention when these people say Trump was actually like based, and then they view him as a traitor, even though they probably were like 12 years old in 2016. Like, this is what we're dealing with here. These are not the most intelligent people. They just get easily gaslit by bad faith actors. And this is kind of what we've been up against ever since, because they would understand that we've won so much that if you had like the unity level you saw on social media during Trump's first term, at least for like the first 3 years until COVID hit, that we'd be unstoppable. But that's how the left operates. They're in bed with the left. They try to demoralize. They want people to get out there. That's what they try to do. That's what they, that's their main tactic. So let's see. Giblet for 5 says, I love how Trump's admin is showing the efficiency of our military while repositioning us. And again, this repositions us not in the Middle East, but in the Western Hemisphere. Now, it also takes a stab at Russia and China and forces Russia to the table with with Ukraine a little bit more easy, because now they realize that Trump isn't messing around. He's going after their allies. Even if you want to say it's like a second-rate, third-rate ally, he's still going after them. Clint for 5 says, any update on the Supreme Court overturning Section 2 of the VRA? Are they waiting until after the midterms or for 20? No, the ruling is going to be sometime mid this year, but it's not likely to impact the midterms unless maybe Louisiana has like a trigger law or something like that. Maybe you get the impact there and you net a seat or two, but it's mainly for 2028, even if the ruling comes before. So I do feel the need to reiterate this, even though I'm sure that the moment it happens, if it does happen, God willing, I'm probably going to have to make several videos trying to tell people it does not impact the midterms. It's for 28. But it does kind of buy you some time in the midterms, because a lot of seats will become like auto flips. So we did that one. LT says, LT reporting for duty. Well, thank you for the 5. That might have been the one to get us over. Luigi DeBeast for 5 says, can we trust anti-white Vivek? He's from a culture that hates us, comes off like a sleazy car salesman. His background is also shady. Well, I agree that Vivek has said some anti-white comments. You can't get around that for sure. And he does tend to have this very subtle deference to immigration, so long as it comes from certain countries where he has ancestry in. Also, it is true that Vivek does come off like a snake oil salesman to a lot of people. Even people that like him will admit this, if they're being honest, because he always dances around questions, and his background is kind of shady. So, but I will say this in turn. There's been a lot of focus on Vivek Ramaswamy. Sadly, the Ohio GOP has cleared the field for him. He's not going to lose to some schizophrenic mechanic who's a big Candace Owens fan. He's not going to lose to that guy. That guy would lose the general election by 10, 15 points in Ohio. Even if I have electability concerns with Vivek, that guy's would be much more significantly higher, whether people hate Vivek or they don't. And then you get people saying, oh, elect the Democrat, which is dumb. These people hate you. This is not even some like moderate Democrat in Amy Acton. She's a far left lunatic. And Vivek's issues might help keep the race closer than it should be, for sure. But it's not a matter of can we trust him. The guy is governor of Ohio. He doesn't have any pull over immigration. None of his crazy school year-round policy, if he hasn't retracted it already, would ever be able to come into fruition, and he'll just be there. So I look at the people that say, oh, all we want to do in the midterms is beat Vivek. How about you help people that you like, or help solid Republicans actually win, instead of trying to kneecap somebody that, even though he has problems, is still widely seen as a Trump-aligned MAGA Republican. If he lost a general election, could you imagine the narrative about Donald Trump? Trump is losing the grip over his party. He lost Ohio with his candidate, which is total BS, and we know it's a BS argument. Don't get me wrong. We understand that argument is not one that is likely to hold up. But nevertheless, it's still an argument that will almost certainly be out there, and we do not want that argument to be the prevailing one. So he needs to win. And he probably will fade into obscurity on the national stage, because he had a window where he's going to run as being, oh, like I'm like the Trump stand-in in the debates. He's never going to get the nomination for the Republican Party. He'll probably never, it depends on how good of a governor he is. Maybe his ceiling is like the Senate if he even gets there. But yeah, I don't like that they cleared the field for him in the primary. But he's not losing the primary. He's probably not losing the general. So why are we focusing so much energy on this guy? Like, why? It's internet grifting. And yeah, I hate to even defend certain things here that we have heard from Vivek. But it's clear that he's probably being targeted so heavily because you have like this Pakistani bot farm that just is airing like their ethnic blood feud grievances against the guy. More so than anything else, it's kind of steering the conversation a bit, because it shouldn't matter this much that you have this guy in Ohio who can't do anything about immigration, can't do anything about AI thanks to the big, beautiful bill, but these same people complained about that too. And then they're whining and trying to tank the guy in a general, not realizing the ramifications that this has. They don't have self-awareness is what I'm trying to tell people. That base cat for a member chat says they closed down the Leering Center. Well, that's good to know, but who's going to leer? How are they going to leer now? Now, how will Tampon Tim make his constituents artards like him? CNN couldn't even debunk the rampant, well, because there is fraud. Now, you can say that, well, maybe there are kids at some of these places, but there's hundreds of safety violations, and they're probably overstating their head count. They're not being transparent because it's shady stuff going on. These places should not be operating, period, but they're operating under government dime, taxpayer dime to the tune of billions of dollars. And it's like, you can't convince me that people from the most dysfunctional nation in the world are ripping off Americans without the help of Americans. You're really telling me that there's no, Tim Wall's involvement or there's no involvement of other people. There has to be involvement. You can't convince me otherwise. You just can't. So Laney Bainley says, you don't have to support Nick F. to realize Shapiro is a total Israel firster and not be supported. See, this is the problem here with this false dichotomy. So you either like this guy or you like this guy. There are things that Shapiro says that are dumb, boneheaded, old guard. We've covered that. I also think that there are some things that he occasionally will say that are like, okay, that's a good point. I actually thought his speech at TPUSA was fairly solid because he's right about the R-word right, the R-tard right, the retard right. We'll just say it because it's true. And his speech was not like woke coded or libtard coded or old guard coded. I don't agree with Shapiro that much on certain foreign policy elements. I mean, the guy defends the Iraq war. The guy defends all this stuff, which actually was not really in the best interests of Israel in retrospect. And you even had portions of Israel at the time that were initially against it because they knew that it would embolden Iran. So again, Shapiro's a mixed bag. If he says good things, I'll say nice things. If he says bad things, then I'll say mean things. But I don't think that he's it's not this dichotomy where it's either Shapiro or like these people. I think the old guard in general is not capable of victory. I think that the fringe side is not capable of victory either. It has to be like this sensible nationalism, MAGA type of thing. Put your chips on the right cards. Make sure that you're going to be able to win on certain issues. Like my critique of Shapiro is he doesn't talk about legal immigration very often, with the sole exception of something like maybe like Islamic immigration from Somalia, if it's like in the news or something. So like there are critiques I have of the guy, but he also, if he says something good, I'm going to say he said something good. Doesn't mean that I think that he's on our side. He didn't vote for Trump in 2016, but then the other guy you mentioned didn't vote for Trump in 2024 when the country was on the line and came up with a bunch of BS to justify it and consistently is being embarrassed as we stack these wins, as they try to manufacture this error or like this try to manufacture the environment to be like, oh no, Trump is like viewed as a traitor to the base. It's all terminally online stuff. It doesn't pan out too well. And the second that any of these people, these associates of these people, get out in the real world, it's a disaster for good reason. So Giblet for 5 says they blame the officer because liberals look at everything from a myopic view of oppressed via oppressor and authority is oppressive. You're spot on with that one, Giblet. You'll earn a rare like on that super chat. I don't usually kind of forget that feature exists, but we'll use it sparingly. We'll use it when it's deserved. American Nerd 76's thoughts on Trump's order on housing. We covered it earlier, but I think it's a benefit because it allows the market to stay open. See, that's the thing. Certain, regulations can ensure the free market in certain instances. If you're going to cap something that's a little bit too egregious, kind of just like you have antitrust legislation, it's the same concept. We'll see how it works. Sean Jaramillo for 5 says, when will the tariff case be decided? You're getting impatient. Well, probably I've heard tomorrow. I don't know if that's true, but we'll see. Giblet for 5 says, how come NATO didn't grab that Venezuela oil tanker next to Iceland? Some ally they are. Israel would at least take it. I don't know. That's a good question. Peractorius for 20 says, massive uprising in Iran. Tanks are crushing protesters and firing on them in Tehran. Mario Nawfal is posting videos from people using Starlink smuggled in. It's bad. There are hundreds of lives lost. Prayers up for Iran. We'll see what happens with that. That seems interesting. But Alex for 2 says, thoughts on James Fish back in Florida. He is a character. It's entertaining. He's not going anywhere. That's my take. Like, he'll come up with these, he'll actually put out videos where he's got like the best messaging I've ever heard from like a candidate. And then he'll be like borderline what we would used to call like Fed posting. The next second he gets on X. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't think he's seriously running for governor. I don't know what's up with him. I do not support him because he's a meme candidate. But we'll see what happens with the guy. But he's not a serious, I say it now, he's not a serious candidate. It's entertaining, don't get me wrong. It can be funny, but he's not a serious candidate, and he's kind of another one of these like lol cow types that will finish in a primary in a far distant place from what you would expect. So John Campbell for 5 says, was a pleasure meeting you at the NecoPac party at Amfest. Fishback, most goated guy running so far for 26. Well, I remember meeting you. It was a pleasure meeting you, even though I kind of, I guess, debunked the second, or at least retorted the second half of your super chat there. Because, again, the guy, like I said, you have a guy who will sometimes he'll go out there and he'll say all these great things, and he's made solid arguments on things like immigration and H-1Bs and things like that, and even has introduced an argument or two that I've never even thought of that way before. So he clearly is an intelligent guy from that alone. But then he says things that are just blatantly unserious, and we know how it's going to be portrayed. Like that he's doing the dark vision memes from Connie T back in the day and all this other stuff. And I don't know, I like to meme on him because he looks like the former coach of the Dolphins, Mike McDaniel. They look identical. It's uncanny. But like I said, the guy, I'd be shocked if he hit double digits in the primary. I'd be even more shocked if he finished in second. And I don't know if Collins has announced his run there, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm like thrilled with any of these candidates in the mix, but Fishback is just, again, I would caution against him due to the serious factor, not because of his messaging at times, which has been pretty solid. So, let's see. Bud Keegan for 5 says, what the hell happened to Barris? Unwatchable these days. Why do you think he's gone off the deep end? I don't know. I met Barris, actually. I think I talked about this on a stream, but I actually met Barris at Amfest. I wasn't anticipating him to be there, but it was cool just meeting the guy because of how much I've watched his shows over the past 5 years, even though I told him I don't agree with all of his recent takes. I don't know. I think that the Iran strikes, even though just like 2020, Trump got away with them scot-free, I think that it kind of, I guess you would say, caused a little bit of a switch in the minds of some of these like pollster types, which I don't really understand. I think the midterms will show us the scoreboard of that. But one thing I will say as a critique on Barris is he was saying for the longest time, special elections don't matter. It doesn't matter what happens. And then now he's been saying special elections prove the GOP is cooked, which doesn't really make sense to me because he was just saying the opposite. So clearly something else is driving this. I'm not saying he's like paid off or anything. I just think that he probably cares a lot about that issue, and it kind of broke him a little bit with some of the analysis because he's not been consistent. And he said things that, like South Carolina, Alaska being competitive for Senate, like that's not going to happen. Like, I'm sorry, I would consider deleting my channel if Lindsey Graham lost because it's just not going to happen. Giblet for 5 says disagreement is great in the Conservative Party. The problem is everyone making ultimatums. Yeah, and again, that's the thing. I think you have a lot of people that are just angling for power post-Trump. Even the neocons are smart enough to realize, the ones left are smart enough to realize where the power lies. So they're not antagonizing Trump the way they were before the election. They understand. You might have some people that take these like schizoid shots at Vance from the neocon side, the same way he's getting like schizoid shots taken at him from the fringes. But like, again, disagreement is important. I think that iron sharpens iron of anything, movement, whatever, politics, not politics. But you can't have the demoralization, just nonsense that just occupies so much of people's time, because a lot of it is nonsense. And when you actually have something that might be a legitimate criticism that ever does come along, but instead you're dealing with all these people, nobody's going to take it seriously. Nobody's going to care. So Wyatt for 5 said, do you think Gen Z is more conservative? I used to, but a lot of our guys seem like really indoctrinated neo-communists. I don't know about that. It depends, I guess, where you are. It depends on what part of the generation. I think that Gen Z is more, maybe not socially conservative, but maybe anti-woke, maybe populistic, nationalistic. Those are good things. Economically speaking, like Gen Z would probably vote for a guy who was anti-immigration, pro like universal single-payer healthcare. I'm not saying I support universal single-payer healthcare, because I don't, even though every time I even talk about healthcare, there's 3 people in the comments that are misconstruing my take as being like pro-government healthcare, which is just not true. I just say we need to do something with healthcare because it is an issue. But some candidate like that would probably do very well among younger voters in particular, which is why we need to do something with healthcare that works quick, because if we don't, we're going to end up with that. And it's not going to work in the United States because you're going to have the DMV running healthcare. Nobody wants that. Nobody should want that, for the record. Even if you're sympathetic to, systems in other countries, it doesn't mean they're going to work in the United States. Trump has praised the systems of other countries too. He's not supported them in the United States. So we'll move to what really grinds my gears, because Tucker Carlson, with the third worldist take about Minnesota in particular, what is going on? He's kind of going down the MTG path where he's pandering to like the very, very anti-Israel crowd, the pro like third worldist mindset, kind of like the pro Russia crowd. Some people say it's Qatar. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it isn't. But I do think the guy is not like well lately with some of his takes. And we saw that at the AmFest speech that he gave when he was tweaking out. And of course you get like the neocons or like the old guard that chime in with Tucker and say that he shouldn't be speaking, he should be censored. And it's like, no, he should have speak. In fact, they should have him speak again if they want him to lose audience, because he kind of lost the crowd. Even, the aforementioned Shapiro tended to do better with the crowd criticizing Tucker than Tucker. That would have been unheard of, but I think it's more of a testament to Tucker than it is to like Shapiro being so great or anything, because I wasn't defending him for everything he stood for, but the guy looks like he's aged 10 years. I thought this was AI, but it was a post that was taken from the aforementioned Jimmy F., also known as James Fishback, also known as Dollar Store Mike McDaniel's X account, where he took a picture with Tucker. The guy looks like he's aged 10 years, which is interesting. And he's been doing like a lot of nicotine. Like he does like 4 of those pouches a day or something that he takes that are like 9 milligrams. And it's possible the nicotine could be aging him. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to diagnose him. But when you look at his newsletter, like the way he's saying, like the way he's talking about Minnesota, even because everyone is saying like, oh, if you're critiquing Tucker, you're like shilling for Israel or something. And I'm objectively not. I'm just looking at the I guess you could say that the people that are like the anti-Israel crowd, it does consume them. And then they start posting coal on the timeline all the time. It's like you can't find an instance that isn't the case. So I guess there's that element to it. But the guy's just becoming a third worldist that's kind of showing a lot of deference to like left-wing causes. Even, he goes on record saying that yesterday's shooting is tough to watch, which I guess is true. And then he's saying, oh, it's for conservatives to score political points. Like this sounds like a leftist is writing it. And then he does say that Jacob Frey is behaving like a child and doesn't say anything else. But he says it's secondary to the tragedy of this woman losing her life, which again, the woman decided to, and again, I'm not saying that it's a good thing what happened, because I'm not. It is a tragedy to an extent anytime anybody loses their life. But the tonality of this article, you're not attacking the left. You're not attacking, no, you're saying, oh, this was a mother, and her, like, which is, again, you could say it's technically true that she's a mother or whatever, but you're writing a eulogy that the left is going to enjoy because you're absolving them of the main thing here, which is that this woman did this deliberately, or maybe even accidentally, but was still attacking these people, was shot in self-defense, which you could say that's a tragedy, but you're writing like a eulogy in your newsletter instead of actually going after what really matters here. I don't know this woman. What happened. And the main culprit here is the left trying to spin this, and instead you're playing right into their hands. And then you're saying it's because, actually, we're deposing Maduro in Venezuela. That's, it's because people are desensitized to the violence in Gaza. And this is the rhetoric of somebody you would say, if you didn't know who was writing this article, you read this article, you would say this person's on the left, if not even the far left, or they're just like trying to sound reasonable. Like, well, what is this? Talking about, oh, this is about this is about Gaza. This is about what's going on in Russia, trying to like use it to defend Putin. Like, what are we doing here? Like, seriously, what are we doing here? This guy, I don't think his brain is on straight. He looks like he's aged 10 years. He's a shell of his former self. Now he's starting to look the part. I'm not even saying, like, I actually, like, there is an element of even concern for the guy. Like, who in his life is going to step in and say, what are you doing, man? Like, you got to stop this stuff. I just don't get it. Because, yeah, people that say you could never attack somebody like Tucker because Tucker was, like, great on Fox or something, which is true. But there's nobody that I believe is beyond criticism. If you've watched this show, if you've watched my channel for the past 6, 7, no pun intended, years, because that's how long we've been on, you would know that nobody is beyond reproach, no matter what they necessarily do. So why would Tucker be? I don't get it. Like, I understand there is the halo effect where, okay, I used to like this guy. It's nostalgia. I'm going to defend them. Yeah, but you can call out your friends or people you like when they objectively, post coal on the TL per se. And he's been doing that for a while. It's been going on for like a year or two. The whole like anti-Israel stuff, the brain rot, that part is real. Charlie Kirk talked about that ad nauseum, where people get so fixated on Gaza and they adopt the left, they adopt a left-wing framework of how they view the world, and this is what happens. Like, every single time they turn into some sort of a third worldist, and that's what's going on. So, as for people that are saying, well, Vance has defended Tucker within the past few months, I don't know to what extent Vance pays attention. But I would say that the hysteria over Vance and Tucker is done in bad faith in 95% of cases, if not 99, for one. And for two, yes, I think it would be wise of Vance to kind of see what's going on here and think that it's probably, if you're running for president, a good idea to keep this guy on the sidelines, because at this stage in the game, he's not really doing anyone any favors. I just don't see what he brings to the table anymore. Like interviewing people talking about aliens or something half the time, the other half talking about how great like the leaders that are like these anti-white communists like Maduro are, or America's adversaries are. I'm tired of it. That's not what this is supposed to be about. Like, he used to be very, very good on immigration. Could you imagine Tucker Carlson putting out that newsletter like 5 years ago? Of course you couldn't. Like, seriously, something's going on here, and it's just not, I'm not going to even say it's all like foreign money or something. The guy just doesn't look well. I hate to say it, but it's true, and that one picture, which I thought was AI, but it's not, it's kind of telling. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Everyone wants to be a podcaster. This is what the podcast bros do. You know, you have these people. Like, you have Theo Vaughn whining about deportations being inhumane, and then he says that he, like, thinks that like, Nick Fuentes should be president one day. It's like they don't have any coherent ideology. The only thing that's the baseline, the common denominator of the podcast bro, which used to be before the election pro-Trump and somewhat sensible, now it's anti-Trump, which is a little bit weird. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, guys. But the whole podcast bro circuit, they are just, you know, they're trying to demoralize. They're a part of the demoralization op, whether they know it, whether they realize it, or whether they don't. So that's what I'll say about that. All right. Well, I think that we're going to wrap things up. Like the show, like the stream down below, subscribe, hit the bell, do all that good stuff. We're going to end things. It's a great stream. Good to do a stream midweek, and I will see you guys probably on Sunday, so stay tuned. So, Red Eagle, out.